All right, George. First things first here. How are you feeling? You don't have to get into your thoughts about that NFC Championship game quite yet, but I figure you've got to be on cloud nine with this season, with this head coach, and not least of all, with this quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Essentially, I'm on cloud nine, right? So this team was 4-13 last year, number 2 overall pick, coming from a regime where Dan Snyder was our owner for well over 25 years. There was no hope. There was a glass ceiling on our success. Coming into the year, we had no idea it would eventually come to this. The company line going into this game was, we are recalibrating. We're not retooling. We're not rebuilding. We're kind of fine-tune things, but no one expected it to come to this level. And it's, as you kind of can imagine, starting off the year 7-2, no one even thought that was going to work. Right? You're like, wow, 7-2, we're exceeding expectations. Maybe we're going to hit a glass ceiling and kind of fall down. But then we revamped 7-5. We're on a 7-game winning streak, guys. That's where we're at right now, going to the NFC Championship.
Yeah, it's been wild. We had you on earlier in the season, and I swear every week there's somebody in the chat that is like, "Are the Commanders for real?" And throughout the season, we're like, "No, like they'll come back down to reality." And here we are. It's NFC Championship weekend, and they're right in the mix. Let me ask you this then:
Sure.
with this season, the low expectations, but surpassing everything, what has been your favorite Commanders moment of the season? It can be a win, it can be a play, it can be a highlight, but what is something among the many that have stood out that really stands out above the rest for you?
So I'll do a couple. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna do one that's actual play on the field and one that's more holistic for the team, right? So the play which I saw live was the Hail Mary, or the Noah's Ark, as we call it here in DC, where we beat the Chicago Bears on the very last throw. Jane Daniels kind of lobs up a Hail Mary, and it bounces to Noah Brown. We score the touchdown to win the game. And that just kind of had some extra spice to that game as well, because it was the Washington Commanders versus the Chicago Bears. And the lead up to the week was the Bears were just yakking the entire time. I think the Commanders are kind of humble because we've been bad for so long. The Bears fans were like, we're going to show you, Caleb Williams is going to show out. We're going to we're going to prove that Jane Daniels is not as good. And we won the game. So that was just a fantastic moment. And it came from the depths of nowhere, right? I was at that game. We were winning the entire time. DeAndre Swift had a huge run, took the lead. And we've been in DC before where we lose those games like 9 out of 10 times. That win was just fantastic and just, fun to watch. In terms of like the season in general, just the fact that this is like this brotherhood has came about, right? Like walking into the season, a lot of people kind of gave us some tough times on like Dan Quinn. And, is he Ron Rivera 2.0? Bobby Wagner, is he over the hill? Austin Eckler, is he washed? Zach Ertz, does he have anything left? There was a lot of like, this team's going to be okay. It's going to be 500. Are they kind of not building the team the right way? The fact that the team kind of came together and has united together as a group has been so much fun to watch. And I'll throw one last one, and I'm rambling right now, but Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin I love seeing the justification for him. He's been through it. He was drafted here. He came in as a Redskin. He played as a Washington football teamer. He's a Commander now. He's been all the way through the depth. He scored, prior to this, maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns was his high mark for the entire season. He has 13 touchdowns this year. He's a stand-up guy. He's not a diva wide receiver. He's a hard-working wide receiver, and it's great to see someone be rewarded like that. So it's been a lot of positive over here.
And that relationship between T-Mac and Jaden Daniels took a few games to figure out, but once they started clicking, once they were on that same page, I mean, you're right. They were next to unstoppable. Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
No, George, you mentioned Dan Quinn there briefly. I'm curious, what gives you more personal satisfaction? I don't know if you're a petty guy or not, or if you get satisfaction from this stuff like I would if I was a Commanders fan, but knowing that Cowboys fans have to sit there, watch this game, knowing that they let Dan Quinn go, or knowing that Dan Snyder is watching this game somewhere and finally seeing what a real franchise looks like, what makes you feel better?
So being a Washington Commander fan for the better part of my life, I'm 41 years old, gentlemen, so I've been watching this my entire life. And the clear, easy answer is the fact that Dan Snyder is sitting there in Europe, upset, not here. He sold his team away for about 1 year ago, and all of a sudden, basically the team is thriving as well. There is there's a subliminal kind of a residue of Dan Quinn being successful. I do a show on Sunday mornings called The Best of Enemies it's a roundtable of the NFC East, and my friend James, who I co-produce with, he just talks about, hey, there's going to be a Dan Quinn fall off. He's not a good coach. Things are going to fall apart. And it's fun seeing him being proven wrong. But the Dan Snyder thing, like I said before, there was always a gray cloud over here in DC, always a glass ceiling on our success. It's gone, and things are being built the right way around here, DC.
George, there probably will be some casual NFL fans that are maybe watching their first Commanders game this weekend, maybe their second Commanders game of the season. We all know that Jaden Daniels is the heartbeat of that team, but can you give us a player who's maybe under the radar, not a lot of people know about, that people should keep an eye on Sunday?
Yeah, I'll throw a couple out there. So one person that's rapidly emerging right now is Diami Brown. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. He actually was a third-round draft pick from the University of North Carolina. He was drafted with the intent to kind of foster and grow Sam Howell out, that UNC connection to kind of build them up together. And he just couldn't put it together. He's a height, weight, speed guy. He's actually pretty big. People kind of underestimate that. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. And he's a burner. He's kind of a deep threat wide receiver. But the fact of the matter is his role has been growing more and more. And once Noah Brown was out for the year with that kidney injury that we had, his role had to change. And previously in the year, they basically would throw screens and throw run after catch plays to Diami Brown, very short, screen plays to kind of get him involved in the passing game. But Diami Brown was always a deep threat wide receiver, and I think now he's starting to figure out how to work his routes and his stems in the NFL. He's creating more big plays. So on offense, it's fun to watch him. Gentlemen, I'm not sure if you followed it, but the last 2 games he's had 89 yards and above in the 2 playoff games. So he's rising the occasion at the right time. So offensively, that's a good one. And then I can touch on defense if you want, but
real quick, let me interject here, George. I don't want to interrupt you, but Diami Brown plus 320 at FanDuel for anytime touchdown. So you mentioned him being a deep threat.
It's not a bad bet.
In the end zone maybe 2 weeks ago, I saw him score a touchdown. So yeah, that's a name to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, the nice little hidden parlay to kind of blow up a little bit right there, right? So it's not a bad pick at all.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely a good pick there. On defense, I'm thinking Frankie Oliva is starting to kind of bubble up, and you guys are starting to hear about him more and more, correct? So Frankie Oliva is definitely some person to keep an eye on. I believe he ended up getting second-team All-Pro, but that's kind of we're more localized and hearing that here. And one person I'm also very happy with is Mickey Sanders still, who was our second-round pick from Michigan. There was some contention. We actually traded back in the second round. We had the 40th pick for Montez Sweat. We traded back to get Mikey Sanders still and Ben Sinnott. And, people were like, oh, man, we missed out on Cooper DeJean. People were really worried about that. Cooper DeJean has been getting a lot of clout there in Philadelphia. So Mikey Sanders still has always been a heady player, a run first, stick your nose in kind of run defender, but now he's generating turnovers. And I'm really proud of him because he's a 5'9" corner who typically played the slot. He was actually a wide receiver at Michigan before being the slot corner. Now he's playing the boundary out of necessity. He had 2 interceptions against Detroit last week and swung the face of the game.
Yeah, he got my game ball on the show here last week as well. So real good to see him step up. Let me ask you this. Break down the importance of Sam Cosmi to this offensive line. Like, I'll go out and say one of the finer interior O-linemen in the league. So talk about his importance, and is it going to be Trent Scott in there again, moving to the interior of that Washington O-line?
Yeah, that's great. You're very intuitive. You're on top of it, man. So Sam Cosmi is a very talented interior guard. He was drafted out of Texas. He was supposed to be a kind of a mauler right tackle, but I think just the way it ended up working out, he has athleticism. His RAS score was 9.8, 9.7. And for those that don't know what that means, the relative athletic score at the combine, you compare all tackles at the combine, and he was in the 98th percentile. Like, he can run, he's powerful, he's strong. So they moved him to right guard. Cliff Kingsbury is kind of known for having a guard tackle pull. Like, they do a lot of these traps and duos, and they do this with their running backs. So Sam Cosmi was very impactful in the run game. He's going to be we're going to miss him a lot going into this game, considering he was facing Jalen Carter, who is a, Aaron Donald reincarnate coming back at us right now. So that's definitely a concern. The way they're going to replace him, it's kind of up in the air. There's kind of gamesmanship right now. They're not necessarily, playing their cards. But from what I understand, Trent Scott, who is a kind of a veteran tackle that we have on the team, he slid in the right guard last time. He helped out and he finished the game. He did a pretty decent job against Detroit. They're talking about that's the probable solution. The other theory is, do you want your best 5 linemen on the field at any given time? So Andrew Wiley is our current right tackle from Kansas City. He's played right guard in Kansas City before. There is some talk of, hey, maybe we can bump Andrew Wiley inside. We have Cornelius Lucas, who's a former Falcon. He's been on our team for a couple of years now as well. Do we leave him at right tackle? Do we move him to right tackle, move Wiley in? They're both veterans. They can kind of figure it out. But I think from what I'm guessing is they want to have 4 elements that remain the same and only replace that one right guard, so that's too much chemistry being disrupted. And just keep Trent Scott there from what I gather.
Let me ask you this. At FanDuel right now, Brian Robinson is set at 37.5, Austin Eckler 18.5, Jaden Daniels 54.5 rushing yards. Which player is poised to cash an over bet of those 3?
So I'm going to make it sexy, man. I'm going for Jaden Daniels for sure, right? So Jaden Daniels is the one. Brian Robinson is the one that I'm the most disappointed in. I remember when we talked at the beginning of the season, guys, I was like, Brian Robinson is going to have a great year. I actually like Brian Robinson, but he struggles to, have explosive plays. I think the Eagles have only given up, I think 44 plays all season of runs over 10 yards. I think that's kind of their the stat of the week. So I'm worried about Brian Robinson potentially having a big play or even having a big day. Austin Eckler is a pretty safe bet too. He wasn't in that Week 16 matchup against Philadelphia, and he did a great job. I think he had 7 yards per carry against the Lions last week, but Lions defense isn't Philadelphia's defense. But going back to this, if you want to have recency statistics, I think I have it right here. I think it's 89. Let me just double check real fast. 81 yards. So last time in Week 16, Jaden Daniels had 81 rushing yards against the Eagles and 5 touchdown passes. So I think it's going to be I don't want to balls to the walls. I don't know if I can say that on the show. It's going to be a balls to the walls. Jaden Daniels is doing everything he can this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do a lot of, zone reads, run pass options, whatever they can to get him the ball in his hands.
Other than obviously the unfortunate Cosmi injury, what has changed for Washington since these two teams last faced each other in the regular season?
So there's going to be like the physical element, and there's also going to be the scheme element, right? So in regard to the physical element, we're getting Jonathan Allen back. I don't know if you guys recall, he actually had a torn pec. He was supposed to be out for the season, but actually it was a partially torn pec. So they just did repair on that. He rehabbed. He's been playing the past couple of weeks. I think it's the past 3 weeks he's been playing. He had his best game of the season last week against Detroit. I think he's starting to find his footing again. And that allows Washington to kind of tinker with their defensive line. They could put Jonathan Allen out there with Deron Payne, and also Johnny Newton, who's I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. He was an Illinois product, potential first-round pick. They can put all 3 of those linemen on the field at all at one time to stop Saquon Barkley. So that's interesting. Austin Eckler's back for this time, right? He can actually return. He can be more of an offensive option for Washington this week. And Austin Eckler, the reason why he's actually very important is not only is he a great pass catcher, not only is he a good runner, but he's also he's a good kick returner. He actually plays kick return for us. I believe he might have been like a Pro Bowl alternate for that. And then he also is a great pass blocker. So just having him on the field will also be great. And then Marshawn Lattimore, also getting more experience, is going to be he returned for the very first week against A.J. Brown, but that was off a 5-week stint of having a hamstring injury. So he'll be back. But that's the physical component. The schematic component is Washington's kind of found its identity. I'm sure we love football. We watch the game. They don't even punt the ball anymore, guys. I'm sure you guys are catching this. They're going for it on 4th and 1 and 4th and short every single time.
Madden style.
It's so bad. It's so Madden style right now. And what's happening with that is it's putting so much pressure on the opposing team, like against Tampa Bay, against Detroit, and it's basically forcing the games into track meets. And against Detroit, which is they're one of the most an historic offense, averaging 33 points per game, it's keeping them off the field. And I think that's what they want to do with Philadelphia: keep Saquon off the field, limit those explosive plays, keep the ball in our hands, just control the clock. I think is what they want to do.
You mentioned they keep going for it on 4th down, and they're very good at it. Over 80% success rate, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, just put it this way. They're better on 4th down than Andy Reid and the Chiefs are. I mean, what does that tell you? So, George, is there any element of luck to this? Because there's been some talk in the gambling Twitter space that's a luck statistic. So is it great play calling and Jaden Daniels is just unstoppable? Or is this something that they won't be able to sustain the next couple weeks?
My honest opinion, I think Jaden Daniels is dynamic enough. I truly do believe that. Maybe this high clip of 80% will, obviously will have a slight regression, but I always think it's going to be in the positive. I think it's maybe 60, 70% because he's a cheat code. He's a quarterback. He's actually can throw the ball first. He isn't people know him of his mobility, but he's a great cognitive quarterback, can throw with anticipation. He's accurate. But I think if it's a 4th and short, 4th and 3, 4th and 2, the team trusts him enough to let him out in space and do a little bootleg with him and let him cook, right? Is he going to run? Is he going to throw that little dump off? He has a decision making to do so. And I think it's one of the most dangerous plays in in our playbook. No one can stop a 4th and 2 with Jaden Daniels, creating on his own. So I think it's pretty high clip.
How do the Commanders stop Saquon Barkley, George? I mean, Jalen Hurts hasn't really been himself lately.
Yeah.
Just had that little knee injury. We'll see how serious that is. I know his hand's a little bit banged up too. Is this a situation where you just crowd the box, you bring the safeties down, and you make Jalen Hurts, at least early on in the first quarter, prove that he can beat you over the top?
Absolutely. So I think it's all about gap control and gap integrity. I believe Saquon Barkley has explosive run rates. If you guys are familiar with that stat, it's runs for over 20 yards. Saquon Barkley has 20% of the total explosive runs in the entire NFL. I think it's like 15 or something like that. It's ridiculous, right? I think what Washington should do, considering the fact that Jalen Hurts has a banged up knee, he hasn't been performing well. Their passing game isn't necessarily the most effective right now, is just sell out on it, right? Jalen Hurts' best quality, in my opinion, is his improvisational skills, where he basically will do that zone read and kind of pull it on his own and run on his own, right? For me, it's like that's what I want. I want him to basically, we'll sell out and we'll take away Saquon Barkley. He's not going to make that run. I want you, Jalen Hurts, to run around the corner so we can put a hat on you too. If you're banged up right now, why don't we hit you going around the corner as well? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I think Washington should have gap integrity, load the box. Maybe have a little cover 3 zone to kind of take away those big plays from AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and let's see the best man win.
You mentioned Luvu earlier here. He had 2 monster games against this Eagles team. Is he a dude that could show out on Sunday if Washington is going to win this football game?
I think so. So Frankie Luvu, he was one of my favorite signings during the offseason. I do a all 22 breakdown with some really smart guys on Tuesday. I'm the host. I watch them teach me how to basically break down the all 22, and they're fantastic about it. And going into the season, Frankie Luvu was always that firecracker player. He kind of was the guy that played with his hair on fire. He would make a mistake at 150%. So if he made a mistake, it'd be pretty bad and go the wrong way. But I think with him, he's the perfect pairing with Bobby Wagner, because Bobby Wagner is that cerebral captain, Hall of Fame linebacker, kind of putting him in the right position. And it's like, all right, you crazy pit bull, go out and run and go ahead and do what you got to do. And that's what Frankie Luvu has been doing right now. So in addition to tackles, he has, I think, 8 sacks on the year, has an interception, a couple forced fumbles, and he's actually dropped a couple interceptions this year too. So I think, Bobby Wagner is our captain, but I think our most important defensive player is Frankie Luvu, in my opinion.
The spread here is Philly -6.5. Give us a score prediction. What do you think it's going to look like at the end of that football game?
So I got us winning, guys. I feel the momentum. I think Washington is hot right now. 7-game winning streak. Going into Philadelphia, things are clicking for us. Our defense is starting to come together. I love our coaches. One of my biggest fears is I don't want Cliff Kingsbury to leave next year, because I think the marriage between an offensive coordinator and a rookie quarterback is very special. And I think, Jaden's doing very well, but I think he's also doing well because Cliff Kingsbury knows how to use him, right? So I think our offense will be competitive. I'm going to be superstitious. I said 21-26 Washington over Detroit. Running it back one more time, 27-26 Washington over Philadelphia. Washington's the cardiac commanders around here in DC. I don't know if you guys are catching that nickname, but prior to that Detroit Lions win, we won 5 straight games in a row on the last play of the game. So that kind of you build character, you build grit doing that. So I don't think I think we're kind of unflappable at the moment. We might not win, but I don't think we're going to back down. I think it's going to be a great game.
George, last question for you. Did you notice at the end of that Rams-Eagles game, the Rams started to have a lot of success with the no huddle? And I think about the Cliff Kingsbury offense and Jaden Daniels. They had to have noticed that. And I feel like that's a way to neutralize that pass rush. The Eagles, for the last 10 years, have always been that team that's rotated defensive linemen. They were one of the teams that first started doing that really successfully at a high volume. How much no huddle do you think we see on Sunday?
A lot. That's kind of been the personality for Washington as the years kind of progressed. And Jaden actually likes it too. I feel like, from what I understand, what Jaden is, it allows him more time to walk up to the line and kind of decipher what the defense is doing and look at the coverages and break that down. And it also, as you notice, if there is no huddle, if it's kind of a much kind of quick huddle on offense, the defense can't substitute their packages as well, right? So it kind of eliminates a variable. It kind of eliminates what Philadelphia can do to counteract Washington, and hopefully it wears out the defensive line. Hopefully Jalen Carter won't be able to take a break every couple of plays. It'll give his little breath.
Let me ask you this. I'm on Zach Ertz anytime touchdown, and Jaden recently said that he's one of 3 names that he owes a lot to for this rookie season. Do you like that bet there? And is there an undercurrent of a really good relationship there between Jaden and the tight end?
Absolutely. So there was an interview, I believe, yesterday, his press conference over here in DC. One of our reporters asked, "Hey, who could you attest your most who can you attest your most development for the entire season?" And he said Marcus Mariota number 1. He said Zach Ertz number 2, and he said Bobby Wagner number 3. And it's kind of funny. Those were those 3 veterans that came into DC that were kind of polarizing. Are they over the hill? And those are the ones that are kind of bringing that brotherhood into DC. Zach Ertz, it's funny. He kind of, he's not blowing up and having these 100 yards games, but he's savvy. He's kind of a zone breaker as well. That's, if you want to, have a parlay and throw a $5 bet, Diami Brown, Zach Ertz, Jaden Daniels of rushing touchdown, those 3, that'd be a nice little package right there. Diami Brown's been explosive. Zach Ertz against Philadelphia to kind of, revenge game there. And Jaden Daniels is going to run the ball a lot. So that's probably a low risk, high reward bet. So don't be afraid of that one.
I love it. I love it. Let us know, George, where we can catch all of your content.
So thank you for this, guys. I love jumping on this. So we got to do this again sometime. You guys will join my show sometime. So I'm George Carmi. You can find me on X at @GCarmi21. I'm the managing editor for Full Press Coverage, Commanders on Full Press NFL. I do my written work there, but predominantly my audio, my podcast work is the Big Doug and Carmi Show on YouTube. Definitely give us a follow. We have some great guests. It's going to become draft season. Hopefully, we have some playoffs to talk about. But in a couple of weeks, we'll have some draft season to talk about as well. So definitely follow us on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. George, best of luck this weekend. I hope you can enjoy the game. Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Take care, man.
Thanks, gentlemen. See you guys.